Pianist laughs at blind black girl on stage. Seconds later, he bows his head in silence. Before we continue, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Feel free to subscribe as well. We'd be happy to have you here with us. The laughter cut through the auditorium like a blade. Lucas Wainwright, prodigy pianist and youngest judge of the National Talent Show, couldn't contain his chuckle. Everyone turned as the blind black girl in dark glasses and a red ribbon took slow steps toward the grand piano. Whispers fluttered like moths across the room. "Is this a joke?" someone muttered. Lucas leaned back, smirking, and pointed mockingly. But Eliza stood still, her fingers inches from the keys, and raised her face, not to them, but to heaven. From the wings, an older woman clasped her hands, praying silently. She was Pastor Miriam, the woman who had raised Eliza like a daughter after tragedy struck her family. Eliza's steps had been trained by faith, not sight. Her heart beat fast, not from fear, but from anticipation. She heard the laughter, the rustling doubt, but none of it pierced her spirit. What they didn't know was that this piano was her battlefield, and she never lost a battle when God was her guide. Lucas turned to the other judges, still smirking. "She's not even facing the keys right," he said under his breath, eliciting a forced chuckle from one of them. But the others remained silent, sensing something strange in the atmosphere. The lights dimmed slightly, and the camera zoomed in. Eliza placed her fingers gently on the ivory. Her face was calm, yet focused, as though she had stepped into another world entirely. Then, with one deep breath, she played the first note, and the room froze. The melody was nothing like the producers expected. It wasn't flashy or modern. It was ancient and sacred, echoing the soul of hymns whispered through generations. Her hands moved as though an unseen force guided them, telling a story no one could interrupt. Lucas's face tightened. He leaned forward, no longer amused. The audience, caught off guard, began to hush. Phones lowered. Mouths parted slightly. Something divine was happening, and even those who didn't believe could feel it. As the notes flowed, Pastor Miriam wiped a tear. She remembered the nights Eliza sat on her lap, asking if God could really use someone broken and forgotten. "He uses the foolish things to shame the wise," Miriam would whisper, quoting scripture. Now, on the grand stage, it was happening. Eliza's music wasn't just beautiful, it was transcendent. She wasn't playing to impress. She was playing to heal, to declare. And the first heart that cracked under its weight was Lucas's. For a moment, the proud pianist sat motionless. The mockery drained from his face, replaced by something unfamiliar: reverence. Eliza ended the piece with a single soft chord that lingered in the air like a benediction. Silence. Then, spontaneous applause. Standing ovation. But Lucas didn't stand. He bowed his head, his eyes shut tight, hiding something he hadn't felt in years: conviction. And it had come from the hands of the girl he had laughed at. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to hear more stories like this one. The cameras kept rolling as Eliza stood and offered a small, almost imperceptible bow. Though she couldn't see the crowd rising, she heard the applause swell like waves crashing against a long, silent shore. Behind her calm face, her heart thundered. She had given her all in that performance, not to win, but to prove something deeper: that her life, her pain, and her gift had purpose. She had asked God for a sign that morning. This uproar felt like his answer. Lucas stayed seated, his hands clasped under his chin. Something inside him had fractured. The memory came uninvited. His mother at the old upright piano, singing hymns he used to despise. "There's power in the name of Jesus," she'd sing, right before his father stormed out drunk. Lucas had buried those sounds under years of competition, arrogance, and praise. But Eliza's music had unearthed it all like a flood. For the first time in years, he didn't feel superior. He felt exposed. Backstage, Pastor Miriam waited with trembling hands. Eliza walked into her arms, and they held each other silently. A producer approached, clearly shaken, and whispered, We'll need her back for the semi-finals. Eliza nodded, but her face remained serene. I didn't play for them, she said. I played for him. Meanwhile, Lucas stepped away from the judges' panel, ignoring the producers calling after him. Something haunted him. He needed answers, not just about Eliza, but about himself. That night, Eliza sat alone in her small apartment above the church, running her fingers over Braille scripture. Her fingertips paused over Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Tears welled up behind her dark glasses. She didn't know why, but she felt something was coming, something that would shake her entire identity. At that very moment, Pastor Miriam opened an old wooden drawer and pulled out a letter marked, "To Eliza, when the time is right." Elsewhere, Lucas sat in his luxury condo, a drink untouched in his hand. He scrolled through social media comments about Eliza's performance, millions of views already. Everyone called it divine. He hated that word, but deep down, he knew it fit. He remembered a name, Eliza Grace. It tugged at something in his memory. A girl his mother had once mentioned. An accident, a child lost. But how? And why was it stirring something so painful now? The next morning, the show's producers called an emergency meeting. Eliza's clip had gone viral, and sponsors demanded more airtime. Lucas arrived late, tense. The host leaned in, whispering, "You'll be on the judging panel for the semis." Lucas froze. That meant sitting across from Eliza again. He glanced at the photo pinned on the board. Eliza with her red ribbon and serene expression. "She's not just a contestant," someone murmured. "She's a movement." Lucas swallowed hard. Something about that girl was unraveling everything he thought he knew. The envelope trembled in Pastor Miriam's hands. She had waited over a decade to open it, ever since Eliza's mother, barely conscious after the accident, whispered one name and pressed the letter into her palms. The seal was worn, the ink faded, but the words inside were still legible. Her eyes widened as she read the name of the father, a name she recognized. A name tied to wealth, scandal, and music. Her breath caught as she whispered, "Lucas Wainwright." The room suddenly felt colder. Eliza was unaware of the storm gathering around her. She practiced quietly in the sanctuary, her fingers moving across the keys in prayerful harmony. Each note was a conversation with God. She felt peace when she played, but lately, a strange ache followed her melodies, like something unfinished. That night's dream only deepened it. A faceless man placing a red ribbon in her hair saying, "One day, the world will know who you are." She woke with tears she couldn't explain. Lucas, meanwhile, was spiraling. He returned to his childhood home, the one his father left behind when their family crumbled. The piano was still there, covered in dust. He sat at it and played the only song he knew by heart, a hymn his mother used to sing through tears. He hated how it made him feel. He remembered how she cried the night his father confessed he had another child, a daughter, somewhere, lost in the system, or worse, buried in silence. The producers buzzed with excitement over Eliza's next appearance, but behind closed doors, one judge expressed concern. "She's a threat to the format," he said. "She's too good, too otherworldly." They discussed ways to temper her popularity, subtly change her category, maybe even push for a technical review. Lucas said nothing. Inside, he felt torn. He hated the idea of protecting her, but hated more the idea of hurting her again. His pride and guilt battled silently behind his cold eyes. Pastor Miriam visited the church archives, tracing connections she never thought she'd need. She found a birth certificate, half burned in the fire that killed Eliza's mother. The father's name matched the letter, Thomas Wainwright, Lucas's father. Her hands trembled again. She knew Eliza had to be told, but when? How? And what would it do to her? Or to Lucas, who was now unknowingly standing in judgment over his own sister? As rehearsals for the semi-finals began, Eliza entered the studio with confidence. She felt eyes on her, not just from fans, but from something deeper, watching, testing. She couldn't explain the heaviness in the air. Lucas watched her from the shadows, arms crossed, lips tight. She turned her head slightly, sensing him. For a second, neither moved. Then Lucas broke eye contact and walked away. But Pastor Miriam had seen it from the hallway, and she knew the time to tell the truth was drawing near. The rehearsal room buzzed with quiet energy, but Eliza felt the shift in the atmosphere. The air was colder, the greetings more forced. Something was wrong. She overheard two producers whispering about a classification dispute, hinting she might be disqualified from the musical category for lack of formal training. Her heart sank. The music came from her soul. How could that not be enough? Pastor Miriam's warnings echoed in her mind. The higher God lifts you, the more some will try to pull you down. Lucas sat in the judging room, scrolling through the revised list of contestants. Eliza's name had a red asterisk beside it. Pending review. He said nothing as the other judges debated. One scoffed. She's a novelty act, nothing more. Let's be honest. Her story's better than her skill. Lucas clenched his jaw. He remembered that song, the one she played. It haunted him still. He slammed his laptop shut. He couldn't admit it, not even to himself. But that girl was changing him. Backstage, Eliza waited alone in the dark hallway. A door creaked nearby, and she heard voices. "It's political now," a man whispered. "Wainwright's reputation is on the line. If that girl's who they say she is..." The voice trailed off. Eliza tilted her head. Her who? Her pulse quickened. She stepped closer, but bumped a mop bucket, sending it crashing. The voices fell silent. Someone exited quickly. When Eliza returned to the waiting room, Pastor Miriam was there, with the letter in her hand. "Eliza, we need to talk," Miriam said gently, guiding her to a bench. "There's something I've kept from you. About your father." Eliza's lips parted, trembling. Miriam placed the opened letter in her hands and whispered, "His name was Thomas Wainwright." The name struck like lightning. Eliza gripped the paper, shaking. She knew that surname. Everyone did. The Wainwrights were a legacy in classical music. "Lucas?" she asked softly. "Yes," Miriam said. "He's your half-brother." Eliza let out a quiet gasp. The world tilted. Lucas stood by the glass wall, watching the city lights. He didn't know why he'd gone silent in the meeting, why he hadn't defended her, but something had shifted. He remembered the words his father shouted the night before he left. "You'll understand when you meet her." But Lucas never did, until now. The realization settled like a weight in his chest. He mocked his sister, publicly, cruelly, and now the world was watching. Eliza sat at the piano again that evening, the letter beside her, unread but heavy with meaning. Her fingers hovered over the keys but didn't move. The music wouldn't come. For the first time in her life, her soul was too full for song. She whispered a quiet prayer. "God, I don't understand this. Help me love, even now." A single tear slid beneath her dark glasses, and from the shadows, unseen, Lucas watched her, and for the first time, he saw. Lucas paced in his dressing room, his mind a whirlwind. He had spent years building walls of ego, talent, and detachment. Now, one revelation had shattered them all. Eliza was his sister, the girl he humiliated on stage, the girl everyone now called a miracle. But instead of owning it, he reverted to control. He approached the executive producer with a calm voice and a fake smile. "There's a rule about unsanctioned arrangements, right? She didn't submit sheet music. Could disqualify her." The producer nodded slowly. Lucas's mask held firm. Eliza received the notice minutes before her semi-final rehearsal. Submission rejected for technical non-compliance. Her heart dropped. She clutched the paper with trembling hands. "It's not about the paper," she whispered. "It's about the piano." Pastor Miriam held her as her body shook. "You can fight this," the pastor urged. "You have the right." But Eliza shook her head. Not with anger. That night she returned to the sanctuary. She sat at the piano and played, not for the stage, but for strength. As the melody rose, the sanctuary door creaked. A man entered silently. Not Lucas. Older, graying. He watched her, eyes glistening. After a long moment he whispered, "You play like your mother." Eliza turned her head. "Who are you?" He stepped forward, tears now visible. "My name is William Hart. I I knew your mother well. We played in the same church band before she met Thomas Wainwright. I've watched you grow from a distance." Eliza listened, stunned. "Why now?" she asked. He hesitated. "Because you deserve the truth." William handed her a faded photo. Her mother, young, holding a baby in a red ribbon. "Your mother wanted you to be free of shame. That's why she never chased the Wainwright name. But it's time, Eliza. They need to know who you are." He paused. "Especially your brother." Eliza's breath caught. "He already does," she whispered. William's face darkened. "Then why hasn't he come to you?" Eliza had no answer, only a deepening ache in her soul. Lucas sat in his car outside the church, gripping the steering wheel. He had followed her there but couldn't bring himself to enter. His mind raced with justifications. She didn't know him. She didn't need him. But the truth stabbed deeper. He was ashamed, not of her, but of himself. He remembered the cruel laughter, the pride, the cowardice. He had one chance to make it right, and he was failing. He drove away as the church bell chimed midnight. The next morning, social media exploded. Hashtags like "Let Eliza Play" and "Grace" in silence were trending. Public pressure forced the producers to reconsider. Eliza was reinstated. The studio buzzed with tension as she entered for her semi-final performance. Lucas sat silently at the judging panel, eyes fixed on the stage. Eliza sat, took a breath, and began to play. The melody was softer this time, mournful, raw, a lament. And as the final note echoed, Lucas felt a tear slip down his cheek for all the things he should have said. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to hear more stories like this one. The applause following Eliza's semi-final performance felt different, louder, more unified. Even the coldest critics were moved. But Lucas couldn't lift his eyes. The tears had dried, but shame remained. When the cameras cut, he disappeared backstage without a word. Eliza waited quietly in the green room, bracing for backlash. Instead, an intern rushed in. "The judges are requesting a private audience," she said nervously. Eliza stood, steady but uncertain. Her red ribbon trembled slightly in her dark hair. Pastor Miriam followed, silent in prayer. Inside the boardroom, Lucas sat with his arms crossed, staring at the table. One judge cleared his throat. "We've received an overwhelming response from the public, but we also uncovered something." A thick file was slid across the table toward Eliza. "Your birth record. It seems you are, in fact, the daughter of Thomas Wainwright." The air thickened. Gasps followed. Another judge asked, "Were you trying to manipulate sympathy?" Eliza's breath caught. Lucas looked up at last and locked eyes with her. "I didn't even know," Eliza said, voice trembling. "I only found out days ago." The room quieted. Lucas stood slowly. "It's true. I knew before she did. He faltered. "I didn't know how to face it." The judges exchanged glances. "Well, now the whole world knows. This changes the stakes. Your father's legacy, the scandal." Lucas raised his hand. "Don't blame her for his sins." It was the first time he had defended her. Eliza's lips parted slightly, surprised. After the meeting, Lucas approached her in the hallway. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he said, "I ruined your moment, and I don't know how to fix that." Eliza replied softly, "You don't need to fix it. You need to feel it. That's where healing starts." Lucas nodded, ashamed but listening. Then she added, "I forgave you the moment I realized who you were, because grace isn't earned." Her words struck deep. He watched as she walked away, grace in every step. Meanwhile, news spread like wildfire. Headlines read, "Blind Pianist is Wainwright heir. Half-siblings clash on talent stage and redemption in the spotlight." Public support surged, but so did scrutiny. Old family secrets resurfaced. Lucas's mother, upon seeing Eliza on TV, collapsed in tears. "She looks just like her," she whispered to her caretaker. She demanded to be taken to the church where Eliza played. "It's time," she said, gripping a worn Bible. "She needs to hear what I've hidden for too long." The night before the finals, Eliza sat once more at the sanctuary piano. This time, she didn't play, she prayed. God, I don't want to be famous. I just want to be faithful. She didn't notice the woman entering quietly, frail, pale, and regal in posture. Lucas's mother. She sat beside her without a word, then placed something in Eliza's hand. A gold bracelet with an engraved name. Grace. Your mother gave this to me, she whispered, to give to you when the time was right. Eliza stared at the bracelet, her fingers tracing the name engraved in gold. Grace. Her mother's name. Her own middle name. She turned toward the frail woman beside her, eyes hidden behind her dark glasses, but soul wide open. You knew her, she whispered. The woman nodded, emotion choking her voice. She was my friend, before she became the other woman. Eliza's breath hitched. You're Lucas's mother. The woman nodded again. And for years, I hated you. Not for what you did, but for existing. I didn't know I existed, Eliza replied gently. The woman's lips trembled. And yet you still forgave him, publicly. That tells me you carry more of your mother's spirit than his. I should have come to you sooner. I let bitterness raise my son. I made him strong, but cold. Gifted, but blind in ways even you aren't. Eliza reached out and touched the woman's hand. God redeems the years the locusts have eaten, she said. Even bitter ones. The woman began to cry. Across town, Lucas sat alone in his apartment, staring at the grand piano he had once cherished. The silence mocked him. His phone buzzed. An alert about Eliza's visit to his mother. He knew. He had avoided that house since his father's death. Too many ghosts. Too much blame. But tonight, he couldn't run. He drove through the night rain until he saw the sanctuary's doors, still open, light spilling onto the steps. His hands trembled as he reached for the handle. Inside, he found Eliza and his mother seated side by side. They looked up when he entered. Silence held the moment. You came, his mother said. It's time, Lucas replied, stepping forward. To hear the truth, and to tell it. Eliza stood. Lucas turned to her. When I laughed that day, I was mocking what I feared. Your strength, your light, and deep down, what I sensed, that we were connected. That my pride would shatter if I let your music in. Eliza said nothing, only listened. Lucas's mother opened her purse and pulled out an old letter, faded and brittle. Your father left this. It was for both of you. I couldn't bear to read it until now. She handed it to Eliza, who unfolded it slowly. Inside were words of regret, apology, and hope. You are both my legacy, he had written, and my shame. I failed you both, but if you ever meet, make music together. It might heal what I broke. Lucas wiped his eyes. Eliza held the letter to her heart. The next morning, the world awoke to headlines, not about rivalry, but redemption. Wainwright's siblings reunite in grace, one read. But the competition still loomed. Lucas hadn't performed in months, but now he requested a special slot, a duet, with Eliza. The producers hesitated, but eventually agreed. When asked why, Lucas simply replied, because what we're about to play isn't for the judges. It's for the broken, starting with us. Eliza, standing beside him, just smiled. Let's show them what grace sounds like. The grand stage was awash with light, the crowd buzzing in anticipation. Rumors had already spread. Eliza and Lucas, siblings, performing a duet. Some thought it was a publicity stunt. Others feared it would fall apart mid-performance. But when the curtain rose and the two sat side by side at the piano, a hush fell over the arena. Eliza wore her signature red ribbon. Lucas, for the first time, looked humbled, not polished. Their hands hovered above the keys like soldiers before battle. They didn't speak a word, didn't need to. The first note struck like a heartbeat, deep and resonant. What followed wasn't classical, nor contemporary. It was worship, a blend of lament and hope, dissonance and harmony. It told a story only they understood, of broken homes, buried shame, missed years, and newfound mercy. As the melody swelled, Audience members began to cry. Even the judges looked shaken. One whispered, "This isn't a performance, it's a confession." And indeed, it was. Backstage, Pastor Miriam watched with hands over her mouth, eyes brimming. William Hart stood beside her, whispering, "I haven't seen something this powerful since the old revivals." The two musicians played as though heaven itself had composed the score. At the final chord, Eliza gently lifted her hands from the keys. Lucas kept his fingers down a moment longer, then looked up, straight into the cameras. "I need to say something," he said, voice trembling. He stood, turned to the audience. "I laughed at my sister. I mocked her gift, her faith, and her strength. I called myself a musician, but I only knew notes, not purpose. Eliza taught me both. I stand here today to say I was wrong and to ask your forgiveness. But more than that, I'm asking hers." He turned to Eliza, who rose beside him. The auditorium fell into complete silence. Then Eliza stepped forward, took the mic, and simply said, "Forgiven." The crowd erupted, not in applause, but in awe. Something sacred had unfolded. The host, fighting tears, finally walked onto the stage. "I've seen talent, but tonight I saw transformation." Lucas took Eliza's hand and raised it. The camera caught their joined hands, the red ribbon, and the glint of the gold bracelet on Eliza's wrist. Somewhere in the front row, Lucas's mother wept openly, whispering prayers she had long forgotten. That night, it wasn't about winning. It was about witnessing something eternal. After the show, journalists begged for interviews, but Eliza declined. She and Lucas walked out a side door, unnoticed. "You could win this whole thing," Lucas said. Eliza smiled faintly. "I already have." They reached the sidewalk, where the city lights danced like stars on wet pavement. "So, what happens now?" Lucas asked. Eliza replied, "We go where the music leads, but this time, together." And with that, they disappeared into the night, not as rivals or performers, but as siblings mended by grace. The morning after their duet, headlines exploded. "Grace on the keys, brother and sister reclaim legacy, from mockery to mercy." But Lucas didn't read a single article. He couldn't. He felt empty. Not because of shame, but because something deeper had cracked open inside him. A thirst he didn't know he had. He wandered the city alone, ignoring calls and cameras. The weight of the past, the guilt, the applause, it all blurred. Only one question echoed. What now? Eliza returned to the church, her heart strangely heavy. The performance had been powerful, yes, but something was missing. Lucas hadn't truly surrendered, not yet. His public apology was sincere, but his soul still held back. That night, she prayed with Pastor Miriam, both on their knees at the altar. "God, if you started something in him, finish it," Eliza whispered. "Don't let the spotlight blind him from the real light he needs." Miriam nodded, tears in her eyes. "And don't let pain be wasted." Meanwhile, Lucas walked into his childhood home, the one he had avoided since his father's funeral. It was silent, dusty, frozen in time. He sat at the piano, untouched for years, and began to play an old hymn his mother used to sing, "Come, thou fount of every blessing." Halfway through, his fingers faltered. A sob escaped him. He slammed the keys. "God, are you real?" he cried. "If you are, speak louder than this pain." In the stillness, a childhood memory surfaced. He saw his mother kneeling beside him, praying through tears. "Use my son, Lord, even if it costs everything." Back then, he had resented her for it. Now, he wept. The house was no longer empty. It was sacred. Lucas fell to his knees beside the piano, broken, desperate. "God, I don't want to be who I've been. I want to start over. Please, make me new." It wasn't elegant. It wasn't rehearsed, but it was real, and heaven heard. The next day, he walked into the church Eliza attended, unannounced. Pastor Miriam spotted him first. Her eyes widened, but she smiled. "You came." Lucas nodded, his face tear-streaked, his suit wrinkled. "I need help." Eliza turned from the altar and faced him. No words were needed. She opened her arms, and he walked into them like a child returning home. The congregation watched silently, moved beyond words. That Sunday, Lucas didn't play. He listened, and the music that filled him wasn't on keys. It was grace. That evening, Eliza wrote in her journal, "Redemption isn't a one-time note. It's a melody, unfolding over time." Lucas sat beside her, flipping through a worn hymnal. "Do you think God really uses people like us?" he asked. She smiled. "He only uses people like us, broken, willing, redeemed." As the sun set behind the stained glass, casting colors on their faces, Eliza knew the final performance wasn't for the stage. It was for the world, to see what healing truly sounds like. The theater was packed beyond capacity. It wasn't just a final concert, it was a movement. People had flown in from other states, some holding signs that read, "Grace wins," and "Let the music speak." Cameras buzzed, producers buzzed louder, but Eliza sat calmly backstage, fingers gently resting on the keys of a small practice piano. Across from her, Lucas paced nervously. "You sure about this?" he asked. She nodded. "This isn't about us anymore. It's about what God did between us." The lights dimmed. The crowd hushed. A single spotlight bathed the grand piano at center stage. Eliza and Lucas walked out hand in hand, a perfect contrast, her red ribbon fluttering, his eyes soft with humility. The moment they sat down, the world seemed to disappear. Their final piece began. Not a song of triumph, but of testimony. They played Amazing Grace, rearranged with haunting chords and heavenly refrains. The first note cracked open something sacred. The final note would break the floodgates. As they played, images of their story flickered in the minds of the crowd. Mockery turned to awe, rivalry turned to kinship, brokenness turned to beauty. Lucas's mother sat in the front row, hands clasped over her heart. Pastor Miriam wept openly beside her. The music swelled, and Eliza's hands lifted for a brief moment in the air, then descended in perfect unison with Lucas's. The final note rang like a benediction. Silence. Then, thunderous applause. And tears. So many tears. Lucas stood and took the mic, voice shaking. "We are here today not as stars, but as scars healed by grace. I once mocked my sister, but now I stand as her student." He turned to Eliza. "You reminded me who I am and whose I am." Eliza stepped forward. "I never needed a stage to know my worth. I needed a storm, because sometimes it's in the dark that you learn to listen. And when I listened, I heard God sing over me. That night, awards didn't matter. Contracts didn't matter. What mattered was the crowd standing in reverent silence, some kneeling, some holding each other, others whispering prayers they hadn't prayed in years. And somewhere in the heavens, perhaps, a father who failed in life saw a legacy reborn, not through fame, but through forgiveness. Lucas and Eliza bowed side by side, not as performers, but as proof. God writes the most beautiful music with broken instruments. Outside the venue, as people streamed out, strangers hugged, sobbed, and shared stories of their own families, their own regrets. The ripple of grace had begun. Eliza and Lucas walked together into the cool night air. "Think they'll remember us?" Lucas asked. Eliza smiled. "No, they'll remember what God did." And as they disappeared into the city lights, hand in hand, a new song was already forming, one not for stages, but for souls. If you liked this story, write the word "loved" in the comments and tell us where you're listening from. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and send this story to someone you care about. See you in the next story.